Yeah. Sometimes I get so mad, there's no controlling me. My thoughts get so bad, I'm like, I might grab a bat, I don't know. My wrath, my blood boils over like, oh God, here goes. I lost all feeling from my head to my toes. You said some shit that I can't let go, so just stay tuned for the rest of the show. So have you ever felt betrayed? Switches how you see things, realize something needs change. Cause I know you got me fucked up, let me show you what's up. Cause enough is enough. I'll take a face full of pavement just to make a statement. I know there's no turning back. Oh God, adrenaline wasted, so mad I can taste it. I know there's no turning back. I'll do what it takes, I ain't making mistakes like that. I'll put it on your face to make you go take it back. I'll lose my shit, I go crazy when I'm mad. And now you go wish you would shut the fuck up real bad. And now that I'm gone, yeah, I know there's no turning back. And now that I'm gone, yeah, I know there's no turning back. I don't fucking take smoke, I'ma poke a hole through you. Choking's overdue. Come at me and you won't get any older, dude. Crack your holder too. Heating up inside of me, blood so violently. Thanks for trying me. Now it's finally time to see how this rivalry becomes my dynasty. I know there's no turning back. Oh God, adrenaline wasted, so mad I can taste it. I know there's no turning back. I'll do what it takes, I ain't making mistakes like that. I'll put it on your face to make you go take it back. I'll lose my shit, I go crazy when I'm mad. And now you go wish you would shut the fuck up real bad. And now that I'm gone, yeah, I know there's no turning back. And now that I'm gone, yeah, I know there's no turning back.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Hi, Grandma. How you doing? What's going on? So, we're going to talk about Jimmy Hoffa, okay? Because tomorrow I have that interview with Michael. Very nice man. And we're going to hear, he's an eyewitness to the murder of Jimmy Hoffa, okay? What else was I going to say? So I thought what we could do is like refresh our memories about him. We pretty much know, he was in organized crime and he'd been to prison and all this other stuff. But his disappearance, it's been what, July 30th, I think, 48 years missing. Okay. This poor family. I am so excited too. I am. He is so nice. He's so easy to talk to, and he's doing it for closure. That's it. Nothing more. But it's amazing what I'm seeing online, as in the sense of, I think it's funny. You got these ex-mobs, quote unquote, that have YouTube channels. I think it's so funny. Anybody can do whatever they want, but it's funny to see that. Yeah. And they are fascinating. They're very interesting, especially one of them. His name is Michael, starts with that. Okay, now this is what I found. I found some good stuff, you guys. I hope you think it's good. The Teamsters out there, they love him. I found court documents, okay, tons but I'm only going to share a few of them that I've seen that is worth, showing. His indictment, one of them. Okay, also, besides that, the only interview that his daughter did, um, his son's opinion about what happened, obviously, we know. Um, his last interview he ever did, and an interview from jail, a phone interview. How does that sound? Is that too much? I don't even know if we'll get to all that, actually, because I got so much. I put a bunch of videos together. Okay, I think I did a pretty good job. But we're gonna get the bio. I found two websites, not websites, that did a really, 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 really good bio that we can go through. Because there's so much to go through. This is a lifetime. Because all the connections with organized crime goes everywhere. It's everywhere, guys. I mean, he's been charged in what? Tennessee, New Jersey, New York, who knows where else. All right. Let's figure this out here. I will show first. Let's see, I'll make it make sense first. That's what I'll do. Make it make sense. Okay, we will watch what I put together, okay? Since I quit talking. Grandma, you ready for this? So let's I think this guy is funny though. His mouth. Okay, StreamYard's causing a problem here. Hold on. Here we go. Here we go, peoples. Okay. The disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa, BioCourt documents, and more. Here we go. I'll be watching chat on my phone. Let me know if you want me to pause it at any time. Here, let's make the screen bigger here. There we go. That's better. All right. Here we go. Oh, StreamYard
is missing. The family of the former Teamsters Union president and ex-convict reported Hoffa missing early today. His car was found outside a restaurant in Bloomfield Township, Michigan, not far from where the family lives. The police were asked whether they thought Hoffa had been kidnapped. Their answer was, well, his car was there and he was not.
Mr. Bridges' ties with the leading members of the Communist Party in the world, and the fact that Mr. Goldblatt is identified continuously and repeatedly as an important member of the Communist Party, and he's the secretary-treasurer of this local with whom you've made this alliance?
I don't know if Harry Bridges is a Democrat or a communist, or whether Goldblatt's a communist, and this is not the issue behind the question of transportation unity. The workers have so elected them under the free democratic rights of American and under the Taft-Hartley law.
Okay, you guys know who Bobby Kennedy is, right? For some reason, he went after Hoffa. There was bad blood, okay? Just saying.
And they have filed for 10 years, according to Goldblatt's testimony, non-communist affidavits.
All right, would you
If you think it's wrong, you investigate that.
Would you allow, as a Teamster official, a man who was a communist, who was elected by the membership?
We don't have any communists in our Teamsters. Just a moment, please, that I know of. But if the membership saw fit to elect a man who had been tagged, mind you, as a communist, who disavowed the fact that he was a communist, and no proof was presented under our Constitution of the International Union, we would not be in a position to dislodge him from his elected position. Neither would the courts let us do it. However, the provision you're looking for in our Constitution is very clear.
Sure.
And it talks about the question of communism. I helped write the article, so I know it. You don't need to read it to me.
Right.
And I say to you, though, that I'm talking about tagged individuals, and Bridges and Goldblatt are tagged.
Oh, Mr. Hoffa.
Tagged.
What do you mean? There's no question about Mr. Goldblatt, although there can.
She was just as apt to give you a slap across the mouth if you got out of line as she was to say, don't blow your nose.
She held things under control, and she brought us up the way she believed was right. And out of all of the problems that we had, I think that when you look back, she kept us on the right road.
Was she the one that suggested that you shouldn't drink and you shouldn't smoke? I mean, is this...
No, never suggested. I just never discussed it. In fact, my mother never drank. Neither one of my sisters or my brother.
Well, I knew you didn't smoke and you didn't drink, and I just wondered if this was a carryover.
My mother never drank nor smoked. My brother smokes but don't drink, and neither of my sisters either smoke or drink.
Jim, if you don't smoke and you don't drink, and you don't play around at golf, what do you do?
Did you guys see that? Okay, he's a character. Did you see that grin? You know what I think about these mob guys, these organized crime people? They are hilarious. I'm telling you. And a story, do you guys know the movie that is based off of him? Anybody know? If you don't, I'll tell you. The Irishman. That movie was based off of him. Okay, let's continue. I'll carry on. Hey, how you doing, Saul? Thank you for being here. Oh, you're going to a Halloween party? Cool.
Work.
This is entertainment?
7 days a week, I have more fun here working than anybody can have on a golf course or any sport you can name.
Look at that smile.
Is something new, something keeps you alert because you're competing with the best brains in the United States.
With this kind of entertainment, how many days a year do you get at home?
I get home now, since I've been into Washington, on average once a month. I try to get home at least one weekend a month.
Give me one reporter who took a very long look at Hoffa, suggested that in a choice between power and money, you'd always choose power. Was he right?
Not for myself, I would not. I don't need any additional power than I have. But if it came a question of power as against money, certainly I would select power, because out of having additional power, it gives us the ability to get for our members additional economic gains. Nobody in this country respects what's weak. You believe me. If you see a beggar on a corner with his hat in his hand, nobody respects him. Dress the same man up. Give him an air of dignity, and he can command respect. The same thing applies to this union. If we lived in a basement instead of this magnificent building here, and we were broke and had no money instead of the money we have today, employers would be prone to fight us. But because we are financially solid, because we do have an organization that is equipped to handle any situation that comes in front of us, we're successful in getting from the employers what our members want and need without strikes.
Spied on, wiretapped, and followed by the late Teamster boss, Jimmy Hoffa, all the way to Marilyn's bedroom. Hoffa's own lawyer breaks a 30-year silence on the secret bugging of Bobby and Marilyn. That story, right after this. That history has recorded more than once. An affair reported to have been monitored by the FBI and Kennedy's archenemy, the late Teamster boss, Jimmy Hoffa. Until now, the knowledge of Hoffa's spying on Bobby and Marilyn was sketchy. But tonight, our David Lee Miller talks to Hoffa's own longtime attorney, William Buffalino. Buffalino said he wanted to clear the air, but with details of bedroom tapes, he left it a bit more soiled. Here's David Lee's report.
Marilyn Monroe, a probable suicide, 1962. Robert Kennedy, assassinated, 1968. Jimmy Hoffa, presumed murdered, 1975. Now, more than a quarter of a century since these three lives were first intertwined, this man, Bill Buffalino, Jimmy Hoffa's personal attorney, has broken his silence about the shocking details of how he, at the request of the former Teamster boss, bugged then Attorney General Robert Kennedy at the home of Kennedy's secret lover, film star Marilyn Monroe.
I checked on the entire
Wow.
Kennedy family. I had a complete file, and I had Bobby Kennedy surveilled by wiretaps.
It is a story that has become front-page news and the subject of FBI files. But never before has Jimmy Hoffa's right-hand man disclosed the most intimate details of Hoffa's hatred for Robert Kennedy. Now at age 72 and with his health failing, Detroit-based attorney Bill Buffalino wants to set the record straight and agreed to come clean during an interview recorded last week at his
Okay,
retirement
guys.
home in Pompano Beach, Florida.
And I'm sure you know. And if you
What did
don't
Jimmy
know,
Hoffa?
do you know how many people have said they know where his body is? Okay. They go digging up stuff, right? But let me tell you something about Michael. His story's never changed. And the FBI has done nothing about him. You know what they did? I'm not going to tell you what they did. I'll let him tell you. But yeah, Hoffa had a bunch of enemies. And yeah.
But think of Bobby Kennedy. What did he tell you about him?
That he was a spoiled brat, that he didn't know what it was to do a day's work in his life, that he was hungry for power.
To this day, Buffalino, or Buff, as Hoffa used to call him, remembers the Senate hearings in the late 1950s investigating the alleged infiltration of organized crime into the Teamsters.
Mr. Senator, I don't intend to be boxed in on a play of words.
The committee's chief counsel was Robert Kennedy, and with the support of committee member Senator John Kennedy, brother Bobby repeatedly attacked not only Buffalino, but the brash attorney's friend and boss, Jimmy Hoffa.
Did you say that SOB, I'll break his back to anyone? Did you make that statement after these people testified before the committee?
I never talked to either one of them after testifying.
Now, I'm not talking about to them. Did you make that statement here in the hearing room after the testimony was finished?
Not concerning them, far as I know of.
Well, who did you make it about?
I don't know. I may have been discussing somebody in a figure of speech.
Well, who did you make the statement? Whose back were
I
you
don't
going to
even
break?
remember it.
Well, whose back were you going to break, Mr. Hoffa?
Figure of speech, I don't even know who I was talking about, and I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh my
It
God.
was during these hearings that Jimmy Hoffa and Robert Kennedy became bitter enemies. Their venomous debate and relationship later became the subject of the TV movie, aptly titled Blood Feud.
Well, whose back are you going to break, Mr. Hoffa?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Whose back, Mr. Hoffa?
I don't know. It's a figure of speech. You understand? Figure of speech, figure of speech.
But the hostility between two of the most powerful men in the country went much further than what was portrayed in the TV movie. Once Kennedy was appointed Attorney General, he made Hoffa's conviction his first priority.
Robert Kennedy has been appointed to President Kennedy's staff. Do you expect the office of Attorney General to be leaning on you?
No comment. I have a case in court.
Hoffa, as head of the country's largest and most powerful union, was accused by Kennedy of allowing the mob to control the Teamsters and its immense multi-million-dollar pension fund. As Attorney General, Kennedy made Hoffa's life a nightmare, repeatedly indicting the union boss. Finally, an angry and frustrated Jimmy Hoffa struck back with the help of his longtime friend and attorney, Bill Buffalino. You were Jimmy Hoffa's right-hand man. Robert Kennedy is making Jimmy Hoffa's life miserable. What does he ask you to do?
Sue the bastard.
And you sued him.
I sued him every time he turned around.
Besides suing Robert Kennedy, what else did you do on Jimmy Hoffa's behalf?
I had him surveilled for at least 2 years.
According to Buffalino, during the surveillance, he and Hoffa learned that Marilyn Monroe, who already had an affair with President John Kennedy, was now intimately involved with his brother Robert. Buffalino says he then contacted this man, a professional wiretapper named Bernie Spindell. Although it was 30 years ago, now, for the first time, Buffalino admits that he, at the request of Jimmy Hoffa, arranged to bug the Attorney General of the United States. To what extent did Bernie Spindell eavesdrop on Marilyn Monroe and Robert Kennedy? What did he do?
He bugged the phone at the junction box. They picked the locks. He and his crew picked the locks to her apartment, and they bugged certain areas, including a nightstand, the bed spring, or under the bed.
Under the bed itself.
Under the bed.
It was a bug.
Wow.
Yeah.
Under Marilyn Monroe's bed.
Transmitter. And the receivers were outside the building. Outside, probably down where the junction box was. Somewhere. It wasn't there. They were all outside of her apartment. So he didn't have to even remove them.
How much did you pay Bernie Spindell to do this?
$17,000, and once or twice $5,000 each.
So Bernie Spindell is bugging Marilyn Monroe's home, and he is eavesdropping on conversations between Marilyn Monroe and Robert Kennedy. What type of things did he tape? What type of conversations? What was said?
Well, there's one time Bobby Kennedy was complaining about Marilyn Monroe keeping a diary. And he read the diary. And there was something in there concerning what happened between them. And he blew his top. Bobby Kennedy blew his top. He said, what the hell are you words to this effect? What the hell are you keeping this? They serve no worthy purpose. Keep it in your mind. And then he had, Bobby Kennedy was the one making the veiled promises that she could find her way to Washington, D.C., either the White House or Washington.
He said this to Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
While you guys were rolling audio tape.
Yeah. That's right.
What else went on with Marilyn Monroe? Was the relationship just platonic? Were they lovers? What did you learn?
I thought Jack Kennedy decided she was a good act, and we ought to keep it in the family, Bobby. Take a shot at her.
They were lovers.
I guess you'd call them lovers. For the time being, he can make any kind of promise when the act is in progress.
Is there any doubt in your mind that it was really Marilyn Monroe and Robert Kennedy who were recorded on this tape?
Absolutely none.
How can you be so sure?
I recognize his voice.
To this day, Bill Buffalino still takes a great deal of pleasure in bashing the Kennedys. But according to investigative writer Dan Moldea, the author of the Hoffa Wars, Buffalino's boast about wiretapping the Attorney General is more than likely all too true.
If there was an attempt to blackmail the White House, Bill Buffalino certainly would have been in a position to have made such an arrangement. He was clearly in a position, he was clearly close enough to Hoffa where he could have done such a thing.
According to Buffalino, wiretapper Spindell never turned the tapes over to Jimmy Hoffa. Buffalino claims Spindell wanted too much money for the secret recordings and says years later, during a police raid of Spindell's home, orchestrated by Robert Kennedy, the tapes were confiscated and later destroyed. If Jimmy Hoffa ever got his hands on these tapes, what was he going to do with them?
He would try to get to Bobby Kennedy to keep him out of jail. He wouldn't want to embarrass him. He wasn't that kind of a man. He wouldn't want to. He just wanted to stay out of prison and do his job.
What do you say to people watching this interview who revere Robert Kennedy and say you did a terrible thing to a great man?
I say to them, I, Bill Buffalino, owe it to you, the general public, to tell it all. I want the truth known, come hell or high water.
Well, that's interesting, David Lee, but why would he wait 30 years if he wanted the public to know? He could have done it right after Hoffa supposedly disappeared in 1975. Why now?
That's very true. Now, for a long time now, Buffalino has wanted to write his memoirs, but at this point in time, he appears to be very ill, and I think he took this as a special opportunity to get a lot of things off his chest. And you better believe, Maury, no matter what you or I may think, he has has no regrets.
All right. Thank you very much, David Lee Miller.
Okay, this is his daughter's interview. Very, very rare. See if I can get it to go louder. I tried to clean it all up. Oops, sorry.
Well, of course, we have to hope that you have to have hope to keep you going. As I see it in my mind, if you'd like me to say truly, I don't think that it is a ransom. I think that the worst has happened, because if we're a ransom and the ransom were paid and Dad were returned, the person that got the ransom would know that we would find him and that Dad would never rest. So I'm afraid I fear the worst.
If it turns out, in fact, that your father is no longer alive and that his death was caused by rivalries within the Teamsters Union, what do you think this will mean in the future? Do you think there will be more violence within the Teamsters?
Well, I would say if that sort of a thing could be proven, it would rip the Teamsters Union absolutely apart.
That's where his car was found. That's where he was going to be. There was a meeting set up. And he called his wife and said they didn't show. And he never came back home.
That he didn't know, had tried to put my father in a car, he would have fought it out on the spot. And he would have not been taken alive. He would have fought it out right there by his car. I am confident that whoever abducted him was a person that he knew. And if he knew them, then we know them and we'll find out. Someone knows them and we'll find them.
TV Detroit. At this late date, after the time that's gone by, I think that it's clear that my father has been assassinated and that we're probably never going to see him again or find the body. And I think all this was part of a calculated plot by whoever did this. It was a highly organized endeavor.
Do you have any suspicions about who was involved in the organization of the endeavor?
Well, I obviously have my suspicions. I'd rather not say right now, and I'd rather let the investigation take its course, which it is.
Wow. Huh, guys? What do you think about that? I think so too. I don't know what their spat was going back and forth. I guess they had a problem with that he liked the cameras on him, allegedly. I don't know. Okay, we're gonna watch this awesome thing here. We won't watch the whole thing. Here we go.
Wonderful man in America and his disappearance.
There we go. Oh, come on.
Remains one of this century's greatest unsolved mysteries. It's been more than 17 years since James Riddle Hoffa vanished, and yet new information continues to surface, along with new accounts of his ultimate fate. The rise and fall of Jimmy Hoffa is an incredible tale with a violent beginning and a tragic end.
July 30th was the worst day in my life.
A tale of remarkable power and deadly corruption.
He says, you killed Fitzsimmons.
Of friendship betrayed and a father's love.
He was always fun. He was always interesting.
The tale of an unholy alliance of the Union and the mob.
He said, well,
We can't back off. We're gangsters. We're not Boy Scouts.
A vicious blood feud between a president's brother and a man who could shut down the country.
Bobby Kennedy saw in Hoffa his own worst qualities.
A tale of strange claims that a man who left us nearly 2 decades ago may still be alive.
Hoffa is now sailing on a beautiful vessel off the Greek Isles, laughing at us all.
And a mysterious murder that has never been solved.
Well, I know who killed Jimmy Hoffa.
Tonight, we'll give you all the facts, tell you what we think, and let you decide. As award-winning investigative reporter and author Mike Wendland returns to a quest he started 17 years ago to uncover the truth about the leader of the world's most powerful union. In Hoffa, the true story.
Hello, I'm Mike Wendland. It was 24 hours before news of James Hoffa's disappearance was leaked to the press back in the summer of 1975. I was then a reporter for the Detroit News and one of the first sent to the scene. I remember calling our veteran labor columnist for background. He'd grown up covering Hoffa and the Teamsters, and his voice was tight. He's dead, he told me. How could you know that, I asked. Because I know Jimmy Hoffa, he said. And if Jimmy Hoffa ain't called home within 24 hours, Jimmy Hoffa's dead.
By most accounts, this is the last place James Riddle Hoffa was seen alive. The Macus Red Fox restaurant occupies one corner of a shopping center about 15 miles from downtown Detroit. On Wednesday, July 30th, 1975, at about 2 p.m., Hoffa arrived here to meet with 3 men, all of them with close ties to organized crime. None of the 3 showed up, and the always punctual Hoffa waited for at least an hour and a half. Witnesses said he looked impatient and angry. Finally, someone picked up Hoffa. His car was found later still parked near the Red Fox. But this is really almost all we know for sure about the actual disappearance of James R. Hoffa. And even these facts are disputed by at least one of those you'll meet tonight.
He was never at that restaurant. I'm convinced that his car was brought to that restaurant parking lot. I always was convinced of that.
In the wake of Hoffa's disappearance, numerous stories emerged purporting to explain what happened to him and why. They've continued to surface even to the present day. But then myth, fiction, and fact are all part of the Hoffa story from beginning to end. That's probably inevitable with a larger-than-life character like Jimmy Hoffa. But tonight, we'll examine all those facts, the lies and the legends, and gauge the veracity of conflicting voices, and do our best to bring you Hoffa, the true story.
In a moment, the young Hoffa's desperate bargain that 4 decades later would lead to his fall.
Throughout Hoffa, the true story, we'll present some of the most prominent theories of what happened to Jimmy Hoffa. One of the most widely believed theories holds that Hoffa's body was placed in the trunk of a car that was then crushed and smelted. The former Teamster boss, it was said, was now a hubcap or a fender. I met Jimmy Hoffa only once, but I'll never forget the advice that he gave me. At one point, he grinned and he playfully punched me in the arm and he said, "Listen, kid, you want to get ahead as a reporter, you talk to guys with dirt under their fingernails, not those suits and ties who sit in the big offices and never get out on the street."
We need you, brother.
Jimmy Hoffa was born in Brazil, Indiana in 1913, the son of a Pennsylvania Dutch coal miner father and an Irish-American mother. His dad died when he was 7, and his mother moved with her 4 children to Detroit. In his early teens, he dropped out of school to help support the family. The early 1930s, the stock market crash had plunged the country into the Great Depression. Jobs were scarce, poverty and despair plentiful. People young and old did what they had to do to survive.
When Jimmy Hoffa was a young man, he and his brother Billy were teamed up with the Kirchhoff brothers, and they were reputed to be fur bandits, stealing furs in order to sell them. Of course, the market for selling furs is not easy. You have to find an outlet. Either it has to be a fur store, but the easiest outlet to find is the mob, which can dispose of any kind of stolen property because they have the apparatus to do that. And Jimmy's and his brother's relationship with mob guys goes way back to their youth when they were reputed to have been involved in that kind of activity.
Fiction or fact, one thing we know for sure, while the young Hoffa was known as a tough little street fighter, he often worked two jobs, one of them here at Detroit's old Fort Street produce terminal, unloading trucks.
He was aggressive. He loved to work and work hard.
80-year-old Robert Bobby Holmes started in the labor movement with Hoffa from day one. And about the time farm workers were striking growers in California, the 18-year-old Hoffa and Holmes led a walkout against intolerable conditions on the loading dock in Detroit. Within a year, both Hoffa and Holmes were working as organizers for the Teamsters.
Jimmy had a slogan, if it moves, sign it up.
But in the rough and tumble world of union organizing in the 1930s, employers often used thugs, goons, and mobsters against the union. And the power of the police almost always sided with management. Hoffa bragged that he'd been arrested numerous times and had the scars to prove it. The police, he'd say later, would beat your brains in for even talking union.
In those days, he would approach drivers sleeping in the cabs of their trucks, knock on the door, and before they could do something out of self-defense, something to him, he would get the whole thing in. Hi, my name is Jimmy Hoffa. I'm an organizer for the Teamsters Union, and he would talk very, very fast, and usually quite persuasively. He was an amazingly hypnotic, persuasive guy.
Jimmy might argue with you, but when you got his word, you had his bond.
In 1936, Hoffa met his future wife, Josephine, on a picket line.
My mother was a laundry worker. They had a strike, and the Teamsters stopped to see if they could help them on the picket line. And apparently, from what I've heard, it was love at first sight.
Within 2 years, a daughter named Barbara arrived, and 3 years later, a son, James P. The International Brotherhood of Teamsters was growing rapidly, and the power of the union movement was on the rise. But the cost was often high. In 1937, over 100 workers were shot and 10 killed by police in the tragic Republic Steel massacre in Chicago. Ironically, one of Hoffa's toughest battles in the early 40s was not with an employer, but with a rival union, the CIO.
They had more money and more manpower than Hoffa did, so Hoffa went to Frank Coppola and to Santo Perone, two mafia guys in Detroit, for the purposes of driving this raiding CIO local out of Detroit to protect the Teamsters' territory. It was essentially a goon squad situation whereby the mafia, doing what it had previously done for the Ford Motor Company, busting heads and busting unions.
Jimmy Hoffa really respected Joe the Monkey. He loved him like a father.
Marty Bacco, then a Detroit radio commentator, was a confidant of the city's Jewish mob, the Purple Gang. He says Hoffa turned to them as well.
He needed clout, and he knew where he could get clout. There was the infamous Detroit Purple Gang, so he befriended Joseph Joe the Monkey Holtzman, who was an aide to Harry Fleischer, who was then head of the infamous Purple Gang.
So Hoffa learned the advantage of gangster support. Only later would he also learn the cost of his desperate bargain with the mob. Henceforth, the mafia and other organized crime elements would always have a hand on Hoffa's shoulder. Throughout the war years, Teamster President Dan Tobin used Hoffa as a roving troubleshooter. The Teamsters guaranteed labor peace and continued to grow. But while Jimmy Hoffa worked to improve his members' salaries, he also improved his own financial situation, setting up a trucking company under his wife's name that some would later say was illegal.
We all carried sandbags in our car because you put down 2 or 3 sticks of dynamite, you put 2 sandbags against it, that blows it inward, not outward.
Bombing the establishments of employers reluctant to deal with the Teamsters was one of Joe Franco's specialties after he started working for Hoffa in 1947. Joe says there were certain things Jimmy would never ask his own agents to do, and for those, he would turn to the mob.
I would say that 95% of it was in-house, but the bad stuff was about 5% out of the house. And he would hire that. The bad stuff. What's real bad? For killing somebody, putting somebody in the hospital, that was in-house. Blowing up a truck, that's not going to hurt nobody. To settle a strike, fighting on the picket lines, that was in-house. That's all in-house. That's all labor. But the other stuff that would be considered heavy duty, then he would go outside and buy it.
My dad was the kind of a dad that you wanted to spend every minute you could with him. He was always fun, he was always interesting, he was always teaching you things.
I have fond memories of going fishing with him up in Canada, going deer hunting, bird hunting with him, and spending time in the field. And those are memories that you'll never lose.
His patience with young people was tremendous, and he always had time as you were growing up. I was a type of person, I'd ask him a million questions, and he never took an impatient time with me.
Some think Charles Chucky O'Brien was also James Hoffa's son. Chucky's mother, whose maiden name was Sylvia Pagano, reportedly had a brief love affair with Hoffa before he met and married Josephine. Chucky says his real father died when he was very young, but he says Hoffa treated him like a son.
Kind of just put his arm around me, and because of his relationship with my mom and Mrs. Hoffa were very close, and Mrs. Hoffa got sick, and so my mom we moved in, we started taking care of helping with the two children and that, and then it just grew, you know, and really I looked at him as a father.
So after 2 decades, James Hoffa was an international vice president of one of the world's strongest unions. But Hoffa's burning hatred of the status quo and his deep distrust of those who maintained it had not diminished. The so-called forces of law and order, Hoffa thought, were arrayed against the working man.
In the years ahead, it would only become more obvious that Hoffa was strongly attracted to those who had found their way to wealth and power by skirting the system and breaking the law. As one commentator described Hoffa, this was a man at war in his heart with Orthodox society. And 2 brothers named Kennedy would soon be joining the battle.
When we come back, the blood feud begins.
Here's another theory of what happened to Jimmy Hoffa.
Hey, Grandma, can you see far? Oh, okay. Just making sure. Boy, this one's long.
It is the shocking idea that Hoffa may have actually arranged his own disappearance. Both former Nixon aide Charles Colson and Hoffa associate Joe Franco suggest that Hoffa may have left behind his family and his plans for a return to Union power, flying off to a new life in a foreign country.
I present to you our honored guest, Jimmy Hoffa.
In April 1956, Teamster President Dave Beck presided at a huge charity dinner honoring the philanthropic Jimmy Hoffa. But within a year, Hoffa would secretly feed the government information about Beck's personal finances that would topple Beck and hand the Teamster presidency to Hoffa.
He had a Napoleonic complex. He wanted power. He didn't care about money or anything like that. He wanted that power.
He regularly said, you do what you have to do. He made his liaisons, his alliances with all kinds of people, saints and sinners. To his discredit, some of his closest friends were some genuinely big league mobsters.
Bugsy Siegel may have created Las Vegas, but the man who really built the town was Jimmy Hoffa.
He caused the goose to go lay the golden egg because in the late 40s, that's when he began the flow of gold into the coffers of mobsters so they could build those glittering hotels and casinos.
The Teamsters Pension Fund served as a multi-billion-dollar bank
for the mafia.
Loans from the pension fund to the mob were running into the hundreds of millions. Both Hoffa and the man he put in charge of the pension fund, Alan Dorfman, were alleged.
Shredder, hi, sweetie. Thanks for coming through. You're awesome.
Allegedly lining their own pockets with kickbacks. Dorfman's Chicago family had strong mob ties that went all the way back to Al Capone. And it was that kind of organized crime connection, along with charges of illegitimate personal gain, that drew the spotlight of the McClellan Committee hearings into labor racketeering in February.
Hey, what I'm doing here, Shredder, I don't know if you know. Of course, I'm doing like a recap, a refresher of Jimmy Hoffa, because tomorrow I got an amazing interview. A man that's seen Jimmy Hoffa being murdered. I believe what he's saying. And I'll probably tell why tomorrow, why I do. His story is fascinating, and I'm so lucky that he agreed to do this with me. I'm so grateful. He's been on mainstream media. Very nice man, very nice.
February of 1957. Driving the committee was the politically ambitious young senator from Massachusetts, John Kennedy, along with his younger brother, Robert, as chief counsel.
They viewed organized crime as being the enemy within, and they viewed Hoffa as being part of this conspiracy of evil.
He perceived Bobby Kennedy as a rich man's son who had never worked. He felt that my father and anybody who was a working man or with the unions was something dirty.
He was a close friend of yours? I knew Joe Holtzman. He was a close friend of yours? I knew Joe Holtzman. He was a close friend of yours? Just a moment. I knew Joe Holtzman. He wasn't any particular friend of mine.
Well, I think Bobby Kennedy saw in Hoffa his own worst qualities. Both men were really amazingly similar, despite the fact that one clearly was an Ivy League aristocrat and the other a 7th grade dropout.
I don't intend to have the impression left that's been stated publicly that I'm controlled by gangsters. I am not controlled by them.
Mr. Hoffa, that would make a great deal of sense. I'd be very sympathetic if it wasn't for the fact that a majority of these people are in the Central States Conference. And the people under your jurisdiction, you've got people in Detroit, at least 15 who have police records. I'd say you're not tough enough to get rid of these people then.
Well, I don't propose to...
You haven't moved against any of them.
I don't propose to act tough, and I will follow the Constitution of the International Union.
Is there any question?
A month after Hoffa's defiant appearance, the committee cited him for more than 80 improper activities, ranging from labor racketeering to collaborating with organized crime figures. Hoffa, it said, was a dangerous influence in the American labor movement.
And jubilant Jimmy Hoffa sweeps in as new president of the Teamsters.
Despite all the negative publicity, the Teamster Convention voted 3-1 to make Jimmy Hoffa its new international president. From now on, Hoffa would spend less and less time at the family's modest home in Detroit or at their cottage in suburban.
And what I want to say about the Teamsters out there, they still have respect for him. Yep. And you'll see why in a minute. Yep.
Urban Lake Orion. He would make it back for special occasions like daughter Barbara's college graduation. But the chance to relax with a fishing pole was rare, and Josephine was often left to her own devices to battle the twin demons of alcohol and intense loneliness. Hoffa was based now at Teamster headquarters in Washington, and he was traveling the country at a feverish pace, defending himself against a mounting series of criminal charges, from bribery to wiretapping his own Teamster subordinates. In each case, either he was able to beat the charges or they were dropped, and his popularity with his rank and file remained high.
Frankly, I don't get worried about much. Or I would probably have no hair or all gray.
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear.
The election of 1960 brought the appointment of the new president's brother as Attorney General.
Bobby Kennedy was the greatest crime fighter this country has ever had, and he was determined to bring Jimmy Hoffa down.
Joe Franco was having legal trouble of his own and was at a meeting at the Justice Department when Robert Kennedy walked in to say he wanted something on Hoffa.
Tell me anything you heard. I don't care if you make it up. As long as we can go into a grand jury with it, he says, now I'll carry the ball from there. And I'll give you 5 years of immunity.
Okay, guys.
Kennedy.
I do want to say you guys are going to be amazed what I found because you guys, I look for evidence. I found the indictment, the indictment. I also found the Freedom of Information Act from the FBI when they were watching him or whatever. So I was super excited when I found this shit. Okay, carry on.
And his Get Hoffa squad brought their first case against Hoffa for accepting illegal payments from employers. Chucky O'Brien, traveling with Hoffa as an aide, says Hoffa employed his favorite wiretap expert, Bernie the Bug Spindell.
I worked with Bernie. We bugged the judge's office, the judge's phone in Chattanooga, and we wired the FBI. I mean, they were doing it to us, so we did the reverse.
The trial ended in a hung jury, but about this time, Hoffa reportedly talked with a Teamster official named Edward Grady Parton about bombing Robert Kennedy's home. Years later, Parton would tell organized crime expert and author Dan Moldia about the conversation.
I want some fast explosives. I want, when they go off, they'll burn it, goddamn. I have to burn all them some bitches up. And I said, you mean the kids too? He said, that's right. So they belong to that son bitch, don't they? I said, now wait just a goddamn minute. I said, I ain't gonna be no part of listening to nothing about kids being killed.
Some of Hoffa's friends were concerned about Jimmy's increasing rage at the Kennedys.
I says, Jimmy, you can't fight the United States government. Take it easy. He says, well, we can't back off. We're gangsters. We're not Boy Scouts.
In the early 1960s, the FBI in Detroit succeeded in bugging the office of two of the city's top mafiosi. Agents eavesdropped as Anthony Tony Jack Giacalone, his brother Vito, or Billy Jack, and their friends talked about gambling, loan sharking, police payoffs, and murder.
These 2,000 pages of secret mob conversations have never been used in court.
Wow.
And had been locked away in a government safe. They were leaked to us by our federal source who felt they were too important to be kept from the public. They reveal that Jimmy Hoffa was as close as you can be to La Cosa Nostra without being a made member.
Ooh, he's
Tony
a
Giacalone was known as the king of the streets for the Detroit area mafia. He was the boss of the street operations, the gambling operations, the loan shark operations.
Giacalone was also an old friend of James Hoffa. With Hoffa in legal trouble, some mafiosi were nervous about what Jimmy could tell authorities. But in a conversation recorded on November 27, 1963, Giacalone argued against the suggestion from a mafia don's son that they grab that Jimmy Hoffa.
Jimmy Hoffa
Jimmy
is the
Hoffa,
type of guy you
he
can't
wasn't a
bulldog,
snitch.
number one. Number two, whose connections do you think are keeping me out of jail? This is our connection. 3, I could never do this to him.
3 weeks later, Tony Giacalone, who was under indictment for police bribery, talked about how Hoffa had helped him by giving the presiding judge a $10,000 bribe. According to Joe Franco, the money may have had a strange smell because Hoffa kept a cash supply in a basement sewer trap.
This is what I was told, and I smelt it because I had to deliver it. And I said, where the hell did he keep this stuff? In the sewer trap.
What?
Chucky O'Brien called Giacalone Uncle Tony. Once, while talking about Hoffa's legal troubles, Giacalone told him,
I don't like to do anything by the law. I never want anything by the law.
And Chucky responded, there's no question about it. The FBI also bugged the Detroit apartment of Chucky's mother, Sylvia, who at the time was Tony Giacalone's mistress. Sylvia was a close friend of Josephine Hoffa, and Giacalone and the mob kept close tabs on James Hoffa through that connection. Giacalone would visit Sylvia at the apartment and often brought along a mob friend named Tony Cimini as a companion for the lonely Josephine. Chucky and the Hoffa children deny any of this happened, but the evidence of the FBI tapes is overwhelming.
Let me tell you about tapes. You can do anything electronically you want with tapes. I'm convinced that they fix tapes the way they want to fix tapes, okay?
The FBI transcripts also showed that when Josephine Hoffa's relationship with Tony Cimini became known to mafia leaders in Detroit, they expressed their displeasure to the Giacalones. Eventually, James Hoffa would learn of this, and according to some, that discovery may have begun a series of events that would ultimately seal his fate.
Coming up, Hoffa in a prison brawl with an old friend who later plotted his demise.
Here's one of the earliest versions of Jimmy Hoffa's disappearance. This one claims that his body had been stuffed into a 55-gallon drum, loaded along with other barrels into a large gateway truck, and delivered to a dump in New Jersey.
There we go.
So I bid tribute to my wife here in front of the delegates of this convention.
Jimmy never smoked, never drank, didn't expect anybody around him to drink. Cheating, never cheated on Josephine.
By 1961, straight-laced Jimmy Hoffa was often called the most powerful man in America. He had centralized the union's power in his own hands, and with Teamster membership heading towards 2 million, he could close down much of the country with a strike. The Kennedys were after him with a vengeance. But Chucky O'Brien and Bernie the Bug were headed west with information that both John and Bobby were seeing Marilyn Monroe.
We knew what was going on, so we just went up to California, Bernie and I, and Bernie wired her house.
But when it came time to use the tape, Hoffa said no.
He said, bullshit. He said, they got kids, and I'm not going to hurt the kids or their wives.
Dan Moldia says the real reason was the FBI tapes from Chucky's mother's apartment.
It sort of became a Mexican standoff. You use your tapes, I'll use mine.
Recently, a former Hoffa attorney named Frank Rogano has made the claim that early in 1963, Hoffa told him to tell Florida mobster Santos Trafficante and New Orleans crime boss Carlos Marcello that they should kill the president. Rogano says he passed the message along.
It's not true. He's made up these things and they're all lies.
After the assassination of John Kennedy in Dallas, Rogano says he celebrated with Trafficante and Marcello. Hoffa told a TV reporter, Bobby Kennedy is just another lawyer now. But in fact, Hoffa's first conviction finally came only months later in a jury tampering case. The key witness against Hoffa was Ed Parton, who said he went to the feds after Hoffa raged about blowing up Bobby Kennedy's home. Parton testified that he also heard Hoffa boast that he had one of the jurors in his pocket.
We know Parton got $1 million.
The Justice Department said Parton passed a lie detector test. In April 1964, Hoffa was sentenced to 8 years in prison. 5 more years were added a month later when he was tried and convicted again. This time, a jury decided that Hoffa, Alan Dorfman, and 6 others had stolen $1 million from the Union Pension Fund.
The plea of not guilty entered by
Over the next 2 years, Hoffa was consumed with appeals that went all the way to the Supreme Court. Occasionally, Jimmy would make time for some fishing in Florida with his granddaughter, but finally, the High Court endorsed the convictions, and Hoffa was forced to decide on who would run the Union in his absence. His choice was a man who went back with Hoffa to the early days, Frank Fitzsimmons.
He had no respect for Fitz. He knew Fitz was a weakling.
Did Hoffa choose Fitz because he thought Fitz was weak and easily controlled? Perhaps, but the story goes that when Hoffa found out about his wife Josephine and Tony Samini, he went to Detroit Mafia boss Joe Zerilli, who agreed to put an end to it.
So Joe Zerilli said, Jimmy, we want you to leave a friendly guy in your place. We know Frank Fitzsimmons. We want Frank Fitzsimmons to succeed you. And Hoffa said, fine. And that was the quid pro quo.
On March 7, 1967, James Hoffa turned himself into federal marshals in Washington and was quickly moved into the Lewisburg Penitentiary in Pennsylvania.
It was a very difficult time for him. He was treated like an animal. They put him in a cage. At orders from Bobby Kennedy, he was put into an 8x12 cage where he worked on mattresses.
Wow. Anthony Tony Crow Provenzano was also in Lewisburg at the time, a capo in the Vito Genovese crime family and the president of a New Jersey Teamster local. Tony Crow and Hoffa were old friends.
Tony Provenzano was kind of a nutsy type of guy, and he was constantly bothering my father about this and that, and he wanted his pension, and he would constantly bother him to the point where he became violent. And my father eventually had an altercation with him, punched him out.
Frank Fitzsimmons moved quickly to strengthen his position as acting president. His laissez-faire approach gave the mob a free hand, and he spent much of his time courting President Richard Nixon. Hoffa seethed behind bars for more than 4 years, waiting for a pardon or parole. In July of 1971, Fitzsimmons was elected Teamster president in his own right. Frank Rogano says Hoffa threatened to have Fitzsimmons killed if he weren't free by Christmas.
On 2 or 3 occasions, Fitzsimmons mentioned to me, he said, there's a lot of anxiety in the Union about Jimmy Hoffa. I said, Frank, I can't even discuss that with you.
Charles Colson, one of Nixon's top aides at the time, says the solution to the Hoffa problem came from Nixon himself.
He said that we're going to give Hoffa a parole, but on the condition that he never come back into the labor movement again. You can contact Fitzsimmons and tell him what we're doing.
On December 23rd, a presidential commutation was issued, and James Hoffa walked out of Lewisburg. Both he and his son-in-law, Robert Krancer, had read the document very carefully.
I read it for a half hour. I read every word. I read it 4 and 5 times.
Krancer says there was nothing in the document Hoffa signed that said Hoffa could not engage in union business for the next 10 years. He and Hoffa got on a plane and flew to the Krancer home in St. Louis.
The first time he found out about it was when some reporters in St. Louis asked his opinion of it.
My father-in-law was stunned, absolute stunned. It was released when we were up in the air.
Frank Rogano says Fitzsimmons told him the restriction had been purchased for $1 million. A bribe was delivered to Nixon through Attorney General John Mitchell.
Yes, it was also unconstitutional, violating the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments, and was a bribe. That's correct.
Hoffa spent time with his grandchildren, worked around the compound in Lake Orion, and invested in business deals using his $1.7 million Teamster pension. But he was clearly obsessed with getting the courts to lift the restriction, returning to power.
They took Fitzsimmons up to the mountain and showed him the valley, and he bought the valley, and he forgot his friends. And then he double-crossed me. It's very simple.
He knows in his heart he's a liar.
A deep split developed in the union between Fitzsimmons supporters and Hoffa loyalists. And as the months turned into years, bitterness at times consumed Hoffa.
He says, "You kill Fitzsimmons, and I'll take care of that other English bastard." I says, "Hey, I ain't killing nobody."
Franco says Hoffa's remark about that other English bastard referred to his old friend, Bobby Holmes.
And I still say the same today as I did then. He was my best friend. So when
Do
Jimmy
you
come out,
guys, do you guys see all the people what's the word I want to use? Entwined together? It is so much to keep up on. You know, kind of like the Lori Vallow case. You know what I mean, right? You really got to be with it. I think this stuff is interesting. In my opinion, this is history, okay? If you guys don't think so, let me know. Because I have, oh God, his last interview, his phone call from jail. Let's see. Oh, the FBI. Or I can do a part 2. Just let me know, okay? I'm watching the chat.
I was out there to help him wherever I could.
Finally, in the summer of 1975, Jimmy Hoffa's lawyers were confident that the restriction would soon be lifted. But as Hoffa's hopes brightened, his son's mood darkened.
I felt that he was pushing very, very hard to get back into the union. And I was concerned about the kind of people who were in the union would push back.
People like Hoffa's old prison foe, Tony Provenzano. Hoffa knew he needed Tony Pro's support, and so had a series of meetings with his Detroit Mafia friend, Tony Giacalone, who was related by marriage to Tony Pro. All of this, especially the meetings with Giacalone, so concerned young Jim that he tried to persuade his father to carry a gun and employ a bodyguard. Hoffa had never done either, and said he wasn't about to now.
Anthony, Tony Jack Giacalone, in his day, was Detroit's most feared mafia enforcer. He was reputed to be absolutely ruthless.
Who's that?
His trademark was the coldest, unblinking stare you've ever seen, and he hated journalists. The closest I ever got to him was finding him at lunch one day. I politely walked up, introduced myself, and started asking for a comment, only to get that icy stare and the frigid words, "Don't you ever come near me again, ever."
Next, July 30th, 1975. What really happened?
This is where it's going to get good. I haven't watched this just so you
One of the
know.
most recent stories about the Hoffa disappearance came from a federal prison inmate. The man, who insisted on remaining nameless, said that he and 3 others abducted and drugged Hoffa, drove to Chicago, and dropped him into the waters of Lake Michigan.
Doubt it.
3 weeks before James Hoffa disappeared, a car belonging to Frank Fitzsimmons' son, Richard, an official with Local 299, was bombed in Detroit. It was a flashpoint in the ongoing war between Hoffa and Frank Fitzsimmons.
Are you absolutely certain that no one within 299 had anything to do with that car bombing?
I would bet my life on it.
On July 30th, 1975, Jimmy Hoffa left his Lake Orion home about 1 p.m. On his office calendar, a note said TG, 2 p.m., Red Fox. On his way, Hoffa stopped at a friend's limo service where he told an employee that he was on his way to meet 3 men, Tony Giacalone, Tony Provenzano, and a Giacalone associate named Lenny Schultz.
Interesting.
Hoffa arrived at the Red Fox sometime before 2 and began waiting outside the restaurant. At 2:30, he walked to a nearby phone, called Josephine, and asked, "Where the hell is Tony Giacalone? I'm being stood up." Back in front of the Red Fox, he waited for another hour. And when he used the phone again at 3:30 to call his friend at the limo service, he raged again about being stood up. Sometime after that second call, Jimmy Hoffa disappeared.
When my mother called me on that morning, and she told me that he had not come home all night and not called, I knew that I could only draw the worst conclusions because that was not my father.
While young Jim flew back from northern Michigan, his sister got on a plane in St. Louis.
I sat down in the seat by the window and closed my eyes just to gather my thoughts. And I had a vision of my father slumped over with dark pants and a dark polo-type shirt with open neck, slumped over.
24 hours after his disappearance, Hoffa was officially reported missing, and the world's media spotlight glared at the family home in Lake Orion. The 3 men Hoffa thought he was meeting, Giacalone, Provenzano, and Schultz, all had ironclad alibis and denied any plans for a meeting. Police and the FBI soon focused their attention on Chucky O'Brien, who many felt had angered Hoffa by moving closer to Fitzsimmons.
July 30th was the worst day of my life.
Chucky says he was in the process of moving to Florida and didn't have a car that day, so he borrowed one from his friend Joey Giacalone, the son of Chucky's Uncle Tony. He delivered a large frozen salmon, a gift from a Seattle teamster, to Bobby Holmes and his wife in suburban Farmington Hills. The fish was melting water and blood on the seat of the car.
So now I'm carrying it in the house, and she's a particular housekeeper. She's yelling at me, "You're ruining my floor. You're getting that water and blood all over."
Later, Chucky says he had the car cleaned at a car wash not far from the Red Fox, then returned the car and got a ride back to the home where he was staying just a few minutes from the Red Fox.
Then the next day, I get a call from the secretary saying the old man didn't come home.
And later that night, Chucky had a confrontation with the man he considered a brother.
I talked to him directly, and I questioned where he was and his whereabouts.
I just felt that there's no way that somebody as close as we're supposed to be should even question, my whereabouts or my actions and so forth.
And he turned and left in a very excited way. I haven't talked to him since.
The FBI continued to suspect that Chucky knew something because his story changed the first few times he told it. Also, specially trained dogs appeared to find Hoffa's scent in both the trunk and the back seat of Joey Giacalone's car.
He had a habit of not telling the truth all the time.
Nonetheless, Bobby Holmes confirmed Chucky's fish story and still expresses real affection for him.
But I don't think Chucky O'Brien would ever have hurt Jimmy Hoffa under any circumstances. I think he would have died for him.
Well, I know who killed Jimmy Hoffa, and I know why they killed Jimmy Hoffa.
Oh, everybody knows.
Formerly the agent in charge of the FBI's Detroit office and now a congressional investigator, knows as much as anyone about the Bureau's Hoffa file.
The traditional elements of organized crime that controlled the Teamsters at that time had other fish to fry, and Jimmy Hoffa wasn't on the menu.
According to information leaked from the FBI, Pennsylvania Mafia boss Russell Buffalino authorized the Hoffa hit on a contract given to Tony Provenzano. 3 men from Tony Pro's New Jersey local, the Bergoglio brothers, Sal and Gabe, and Thomas Andretta, were flown into the Pontiac Airport north of Detroit. They were picked up by a Delaware Teamster official and driven to a home not far from the Red
I
Fox.
just want to show you guys.
Meanwhile, the
something
FBI
real
says that after Chucky O'Brien had the car washed,
Oh,
he met with Tony
sorry,
Giacalone at a
guys.
suburban athletic club, again not far from the Red Fox. It was one of 9 contacts he had with
Oh my
Giacalone
God.
in the days immediately
Wow.
surrounding the disappearance. Then, according to the FBI, Chucky went to the
Sorry. Okay, I want to show you guys something, just so you know that I'm not bullshitting you. And yeah, is it Selena or Selena? I love the name, anyways. Look at, I got the FBI paperwork. I was so excited, you guys. You know how I like proof. Look at this. What do you think? Looky, looky there, guys. There's history. Right there. Okay. I'll carry on. La, 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 la. There we go. I found it. Here we go. Oh my God. What's going on?
the Red Fox to pick up the man he called Dad, probably not knowing what was about to happen. They drove to the house where the men from New Jersey were waiting. There, the FBI files say Sally Bugs Bergoglio shot Hoffa twice in the head. Then, the Delaware Teamster official is believed to have disposed of the body at a mafia-owned incinerator in nearby Hamtramck. Of course, there are other ideas about what happened to Jimmy Hoffa. Chucky O'Brien, who says Hoffa never went to the Red Fox that day, is writing a book. Claims Hoffa was hit by a rogue element in the government wanting to galvanize a new holy war against organized crime.
Why did Jimmy Hoffa die? He literally committed suicide. He was warned time and time again to back off and to stay away. The man just wouldn't listen.
Marty Bucko, who became one of Hollywood's top labor fixers while keeping his ties with big-time mobsters, is also writing a book. His mob friends say the FBI account is
You guys, I
actually one of
straight a
2
book.
exceptions.
He was buried
someplace within a 20-minute radius of the Red Fox.
Right.
Joe Franco has already published a book, Hoffa's Man. He offers the astonishing claim that he was at the Red Fox himself that day. He says he recently had caught his wife cheating and so followed her to a beauty shop in the same shopping center.
All of a sudden, I turned this way and I look. I said, "Holy Christ! Now, oh my God, it's Hoffa."
Franco says he was too embarrassed by his wife's infidelity to approach Hoffa. He says he watched from his car for an hour as Hoffa paced and waited. Then he says a car finally pulled up with 3 men in it, all of them with the look of federal agents.
And they knock on Jimmy's window, and Jimmy rolls the window down, and you can see them kind of having conversation. And the old man Sharp, he ain't getting out of the car until they identify themselves.
After more conversation outside the car, Hoffa finally got in with the government agents and drove away. Franco says he followed the car all the way to the Pontiac airport, where he watched as Hoffa headed for a prop jet.
All I could see was Jim with a big smile on his face, reaching up. I could see a hand come out, shaking hands with him, and help him up the staircase. And then all of a sudden, the staircase came up, and off goes the props, and off they go.
There were a lot of people that wanted to kill Hoffa. He had a lot of organized crime connections.
Finally, Charles Colson surprised us by suggesting that Hoffa might have arranged his own disappearance. The former Nixon aide and later general counsel for the Teamsters says the IRS told him in July 1975 that it was about to stick Hoffa with a huge tax bill. That, says Colson, plus the dangers and frustrations of Hoffa's life, could have induced a quick getaway.
And the fact that he was last seen with a friend when he was alive always, to me, lended some credence to the possibility that Hoffa is now sailing on a beautiful vessel off the Greek Isles, laughing at us all.
Still to come.
Okay, just in this one alone, how many different stories have you heard? Just wait until you see the other stuff. I don't know. I think it's interesting. Many don't, but I do. Okay, I'll carry on.
We'll tell you what we think really happened to James Riddle Hoffa.
The disappearance of such a powerful man has prompted many false claims about what happened to Hoffa. The latest comes from Donald Francos, a convicted murderer, who says he was spirited out of prison to kill Hoffa. Franco says he shot Hoffa in a house 20 miles from the Red Fox at 1:30 in the afternoon. But that's before Hoffa even arrived at the Red Fox. Fueling such stories is the fact that the government has never closed the case. In the months following the disappearance, a grand jury in Detroit hauled in Chucky O'Brien, Tony Provenzano, Sal Bergoglio and his brother Gabe, Thomas Andretta, and of course the sweet-tempered Tony Giacalone. Most pled the Fifth Amendment or were less than cooperative.
It'll never be prosecuted because the information, the admissible evidence, comes from informants who requested confidentiality and wouldn't testify even if subpoenaed because they'd be killed. Much of the information is from people who are dead.
Death has indeed claimed a number of key Hoffa players. Sal Briguglio, the alleged triggerman, was gunned down in New York's Little Italy in March 1978. 22 months later, Alan Dorfman, the mob's man in charge of the pension fund, was also cut down in suburban Chicago. And Tony Provenzano died of a heart attack in prison in 1988. But what about those tabloid claims that Hoffa is still alive?
He's dead, otherwise he'd be back.
Hoffa's son, Jim, a Detroit attorney, and his sister, Barbara, a circuit judge in St. Louis, have filed suit to have a look at all of the FBI records.
And several FBI agents have made public statements that they have solved the crime, but they don't have the proof. And I would like to know what they know.
Barbara and Jim's mother,
Really?
Josephine,
Yeah.
passed away in 1980.
I say the happiest day of her life was when he came home from prison, and the saddest day of her life was when he disappeared. And after that, the spark was gone from her.
Jimmy Hoffa's legacy, he is still revered by many, especially among the rank and file, as the man who improved their lives. But he is also scorned by many, including many labor leaders, for giving the labor movement a black eye. Hoffa's disappearance brought the government's full weight down on organized crime and labor corruption. Today, the Teamsters Union is both cleaner and more democratic. So what really happened 17 years ago? There is no evidence that a rogue element in the government set up a Hoffa hit. Joe Franco's own book contains substantial variations from the story he now tells us. And Chuck Colson's notion that Hoffa arranged his own disappearance is totally out of character for Hoffa. So the version that stands up best is the FBI's. 3 men came from New Jersey to kill Hoffa. Chucky O'Brien brought him to a nearby house where he was shot in the head by Sal Briguglio. The body? Elaborate disposal theories require too many witnesses. Marty Bacco's mob pals may be telling it straight that Hoffa was buried in a pre-dug grave someplace close to the Red Fox. Will the murder ever be solved? 2 people still hold the key. The aging retired mobster Tony Giacalone and the bankrupt Chucky O'Brien, who says he's now driving a truck. Jimmy Hoffa's son and daughter, Jim and Barbara, staunchly believe that their father was a good man who did great things for the American worker. We admire their devotion, even if we don't always agree with their perceptions. But on one thing, we are in full accord. After more than 17 years, it's time for the FBI to open up all its files and tell us everything it knows about the disappearance of James Hoffa. Privately, the Bureau says the case is closed. In public, the case remains open, and therefore the Bureau says it can't release the files. It makes you wonder.
Yep.
What are they hiding?
Right.
I'm Mike Wendland. Good night, everyone.
I wish I would have put it on the speed faster a long time ago. How was that, you guys? Wasn't that interesting? I don't know what I'm going to cook for supper. I haven't ate yet. Selena, maybe we'll hear your cousin's names. You never know. I know, right? Okay, now let's watch Jimmy Hoffa. He is so funny to watch. He loves the attention, and that's what the mob had a problem with. Yeah, I for sure want to get to the phone call and his last interview. So yeah, I'm just giving us a brief history lesson here. Well, especially me, before tomorrow's live. Let's see. We'll do this one right here. Look at him. He's so funny. I don't care what anybody says. He's funny to me.
Has commented on how tough you are. I know this is kind of a crazy question, but how tough are you, really?
It's not such a thing as being tough. So far as the physical sense is concerned, I certainly believe that I have the physical stamina to be able to withstand anything that threatens this international union.
Well, where does this reputation come from?
Well, I've had many of them. Physical fight. I don't know which is the toughest. I had a few of them that I wished I didn't have when I was over with.
For instance?
But I come out all right. I have no.
What are you thinking of, though?
Well, we had a strike when they changed our operation. It lasted 7 years. First 2 years of that strike was almost a physical war. An actual war between hundreds of individuals every single morning of that strike existed in 2 years.
You mean
The horse police, the motorcycle police, the squad cars, the foot patrolmen, the scabs.
You mean the pickets were set up,
Tried to
cops were
break
trying
our
to bring them
strike,
through?
and the resistance of our people was so strong that it just naturally developed into violence almost every single morning.
You got any souvenirs in your skull from that fight?
Well, I got 13 stitches out of it, and
Where?
on top of my head, and I got my hand cut up one morning with a strike breaker with a knife.
What did he hit you on the head with a head with?
Hit me on the head with a crowbar.
How long were you in the hospital?
I went down, got sewed up, Came back on the picket line the following afternoon, and we carried on our dispute until we finally won it 7 years later. Well, in 1932, when you became an organizer, you became an individual who was marked for all kinds of assaults, whether it be from the police, whether it beating over the head of a blackjack or a nightclub, whether it became strike breakers, whether it became anti-union individuals of all description. It was just one of those situations where your life was at your hands every day.
But were you one of the
We
guys?
had our fights. There's no question about it, and I don't deny it. I fought back to win, and I used whatever means I had to use to win, and I still do. I don't believe there's any such thing as a half of a victory. Either you win or you lose, and I'm going to win.
Or are you still fixing your own
I
breakfast?
do. I fix it every morning.
I thought maybe that was just a publicity stunt, and after the stories were over, you went back to having it
Look
set up.
at him smile. I do it every morning at the hotel and the apartment.
Jimmy, there's son and daughter. You said one of them is out of college. The daughter is out of college.
Barbara Ann is out of college now, teaching, as I say, the 9th grade in French.
And your boy is going to go to college.
He's in the first year of college now at Michigan State.
What do these kids think about all the publicity that the general president of the Teamsters has had in the last?
Well, they've been brought up with it. I was first married 23 years ago. Got married on a Saturday. Came home on a Sunday. Went on a strike and was gone for 6 weeks with a strike. And it's been pretty well the same routine, turmoil, trouble, headlines, and problems since they were born. They're used to it. It doesn't affect them, fortunately for me.
We'd always spend a lot of time on the weekends together. That was probably the only time we had a real chance to be with him and to go out and be together. During the week, he always had meetings and picket lines and different problems which arose in connection with the union. This is probably during the 1940s. Oftentimes, we'd go out on a Sunday for a drive, and we'd end up going by a picket line to see how it was progressing. I also remember my dad taking me fishing and hunting. We would go up north and with a lot of his union associates and their young boys, and we had a lot of wonderful times being with our fathers, and it was really great.
I'm sure that my wife, 23 years of marriage, my daughter 22, my boy 19. I think that they realize that this is the kind of a job that when you're fucking big business and fucking tradition, that you have to expect publicity from those who are paid by the advertisers to carry their side of the story and not our side of the story. People who work in transportation are a certain independent breed that you don't find in factories or confined to other type industries other than transportation in the Allied.
But does this independence, is this what makes them militant?
I say yes. I say that they realize that where they started $9 a week, and I can well remember the first contract I signed. First contract I signed was for $9 a week, 76 hours a week.
Oh my God.
That same company today is paying $119 a week, 40 hours a week, 5 days a week.
Wow.
And our people understand and appreciate that. So our people have a feeling, and I feel it every time I talk to the people in meetings. They have a feeling. And unless they are militant, unless they are willing to recognize the very need for existence of our unions, their employers will do what they did to take advantage of them all over the United States. Every single instance.
You always took it to the
Took it to the membership, and they voted overwhelmingly to give me the right to do what I did. I don't have large front lawyers around here. I have people who understand the necessity of how to organize, how to conduct strikes, what to do, and how to do it. And I'm not sitting here trying to tell you that our organizers are not individuals who will go out and competently, efficiently do what they're told to do in protection of the workers who belong to our union. They know their business. When you have truck drivers, you have warehousemen organized, or factory workers organized, sufficiently strong. You can use the law today. You can use your economic strength out of the area to surround the area, particularly in transportation, where you don't need muscle. I think that everybody understands that this international union will go a long ways to avoid having a dispute. If we get into a dispute, money and time, whatever necessary of either will be needed. We'll win the argument. And we're not asking people to turn their cheek because nobody's got a right to slap you on either cheek.
When somebody starts writing the labor history of the 1960s, is this going to make Jimmy Hoffa the Mahatma Gandhi, the American labor movement?
We'll make Jimmy Hoffa the president of the International Union who won the fight in Tampa, Florida. However, he had to win it.
What about other places?
We haven't lost any. Check the score. We're not involved in violence unless we're attacked. If we are attacked on the picket line or anywhere else, we reserve the right as Americans to defend ourselves. If the American Federation of Labor, CIO, had any guts, which they haven't, they've lost them completely and traded them out of fear of a subpoena. They would organize a campaign against Kennedy for his sponsorship of the Kennedy-Landrum-Griffin bill, which for the first time in America has made strikebreakers out of one union man to break the strike of another union man. First of all, let me tell you something. Anybody who tries to tell the American people they can live on $1.25 now in any type of work, and I don't care what it is, doesn't understand the desire of the American people for a decent standard of living to what they believe is proper.
Wow.
That's number one. Number two, anybody who tells you that the passing of $1.25 an hour legislation, which with a discriminatory coverage of that law, isn't more destructive than $1 an hour minimum if you were to put into their additional coverage.
Can we go to another?
It's more important to have $1 an hour minimum and complete coverage than it is to have $1 an hour minimum and leave out 40 million workers.
How about that? I found that interesting, you guys. How about you? Whoa, 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 whoa. Jeez. Jeez Louise. Okay. Oh, no. I just lost it. Hold on. I'm going. How could that happen? Stupid. Hold on. No, I can't find it. Oh, no. Okay, I'm trying to find his last interview. Yeah, I got more stuff here. I'm trying to find it. Oh, here we go. I found it. Oh, thank God. And I also found um, the Teamsters channel on here. They got a YouTube, and they are really. Hold on. Okay, I got some issues on here. Hold on. Okay, be quiet, dude. Be quiet. Okay. I'm having problems with StreamYard. Okay. Oh, here we go. Jesus. I'm sorry. I do my best to be organized, you guys. I know, right? Okay, this is one of his last interviews about Bobby. There's two parts, but they're short. Here we go.
And Kennedy said something to me, and I said to him, listen, punk, you are a complete liar, and I'm tired of your nonsense, and I don't want to hear about it again. Now, you just shut up. Don't cause me no more trouble. The thing blows up. Got filed charges against me, obstructions, and everything else. So he adjourned because that rascally adjourned, and I'm standing right here. I see Kennedy get up and come literally running around the table, across the knee, and I keep myself ready. He's going to come. I'm ready to go. So he comes running up to me and says, I have a headache. You give me a headache. And I said, Bobby, the trouble with you got to get a psychiatrist. Lay on the couch with 3 hours. You're sick. The man just trembled, and all the reporters laughed and took pictures. Well, that was right. Then he came over to the international office, and he started the same thing about books and records, and he told him, get out of here, keep going. And we fought him all the way down the line, and we beat him right into the ground. He couldn't go no place. When our boys would come in, they all took the fifth. Everyone took the fifth. And they say to him, you know, Jimmy Hoffa? 5. So now he figures out that to protect myself so I won't get perjury, everybody now must take the fifth so they can't compare their testimony against mine. This was his theory. But everybody held still. And he got no place. 5 contempt charges against me, obstruction of justice, everything. Nothing came out of it. And then he decided he was going to make a different approach, and he did. And this takes quite a while. I don't want to take your time. I'm going to try to shorten it up. He goes to our PR guy, Eddie Schaefer's. Gets Eddie to invite me to Eddie's house with him, so we can have an off-the-record discussion. I said, Eddie, what do I want to meet with him for? So we have a big roundtable discussion, and it's agreed I should go to Eddie's house and meet him. So I do. It's snowing outside. I was sitting in front of a fireplace. This guy got his sleeves rolled up. He really thought it was something, physically. And I'm listening to him talking. He's rambling around and telling me about the line, this hoodlum and that hoodlum and this gangster and that gangster. And he liked to talk about gangsters. Man, he was all aflame when he talked about gangsters and funny names. And I said, then you're sick, for Christ's sake, leave me alone. He said, well, you know something, you think you're a tough guy. I said, no, I don't think I'm a tough guy. What are you talking about? He said, I can beat you at arm wrestling. I said, no, what the hell are you talking? Are you crazy or something? I didn't come here to arm wrestle with you. We get into another wrangle, but whether I should arm wrestle. Eddie Schaefer winked at me and said, get rid of the arguments. All right, roll up my sleeve, take off my coat, flip him over. Then they come in. So then we have dinner. He leaves. When I come back to the hotel, they got 20 FBI guys or 45 FBI guys surrounding the hotel. When I walk in the lobby, they grab me, boom, boom, boom. They all wanted to arm wrestle? So I get mad at them, and fortunately I had a meeting in that same hotel. I had about 100 guys in the lobby, and I said, listen, wait a minute. You want to have trouble with me, you can have it. Because I got 100 guys here, we'll take you apart and put you back together again. I'm going upstairs, make a phone call to my lawyer, I'll go with you, but don't hustle me and don't push me. Some guy named Bill was in charge, he backed off. I called Ed, told Ed I was going down to the station, he better come down and get me out. I come down to the prison, locked me into a cell. Who appears on the scene? Bobby Kennedy and his wife. And he's got a short sleeve jacket on, and he's got a turtleneck deal, And this is now about 11 o'clock. I finally got you, holy Jesus, he goes into such a deal, and I get mad.
About that. I gotta shut that off. Chris Brown, he will strike my channel. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Okay, there's another video. Hold on. Come on, what is going on? Sorry, guys. This is what I want. Okay, guys, have patience with me. All right, hold on. There's another part of that. It's only a minute and 30 seconds. All right.
Mollenhoff, you said to him, and I'm quoting now, "Now look here, Clark, they don't pay newspaper reporters enough for you to be giving me the bad time that you've been giving me. Everyone has his price. What's yours?" Did you make that statement? If you did make it, was it a joke or was it serious? And if it was serious, do you still believe? I don't know where that story came from. What Clark said was that I said that everybody has their price, what's yours? And I said it to him. No, he wasn't kidding me. I know what Clark Mollenhoff did in Des Moines. We have our own investigative way. I know who was associated with Western Des Moines. And then I got in an argument with Clark with another thing in there. The question was, Clark came back to the chairman of the committee and said that I said I was going to break his back. Well, he was 6'4", about 250 pounds, and he was coming down behind me one day. And I was talking to my lawyers, and finally I turned around and said, "Listen, Clark, you take a walk and get out of here and stuff." I don't. I said, "Well, Clark, you may fall. I had a serious accident and your back will get broken." He goes back to the chairman and reports it, and the chairman McClellan says to me, "Whose back are you going to break?" I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." Around. And finally we developed that Clark got in there, and Clark said I said it and so forth. And I said, "Well, if I said it, it was a matter of speaking, and I didn't know what you're talking about." That's the way it went. But I'm the kind of that.
All right. X that out. Oh, just so you know, his son, he ended up being a lawyer with the Teamsters. Hold on, I'm going to show you. Let's see. Oh, I'm glad, Grandma. A lot of people aren't interested in stuff like this, but I am. Especially that I'm going to interview Michael. It's not really an interview. It's getting his story out there. Okay, here he is. He's still alive. Okay, it says, is an American labor leader and attorney who worked with the 10th General President of International Brotherhood of Teamsters. He's the son of Jimmy Hoffa. We know that. Let's see. He was the first elected in 1998, re-elected in 2001, 2006, 11, and 2016. He's now retired. Yep. So he followed in the footsteps of his daddy. Okay, we're going to listen to one of his last phone calls. Well, I can't say that. I'm not 100%. When he was in jail. Let's see. Hold on. I got to do it a certain way. I got to put his picture up there. And here we go. Hold on. I'm here. Can you guys hear this interview? This phone call interview? You can't hear it? Hold on. You can't hear it? Oh my God. Okay. That is interesting. This is so weird, you guys. Hold on. Share screen. Am I going to start it all over? Hold on. Okay, I hope this works. Jesus. Tell me if you can hear.
My personal opinion and observation that no single American can receive justice in the United States based upon three things. One, the cost of investigation, attorneys, and court costs necessary to properly prepare and try a case. Two, that the entire scene in the courtroom is government from the elevator operator to the time you arrive in the courtroom, and the prosecutor and the judge being on the same payroll in most instances have something in common, and consequently, the government is able to gain for themselves the benefit of objections that normally a defense counsel does not receive at the hands of the court. Now, that's my personal experience. Many judges will disagree, but I think if they would play back a recording of their own activities in the courtroom, they would find out this is truly what is happening in America today. Many judges will disagree, but I think if they would play back a recording of their own activities in the courtroom, they would find out this is truly what is happening in America today.
In other words,
Last but not least, the United States government uses every means to be able to assure themselves of a victory in a courtroom by using wiretapping, which they have admitted hundreds and thousands of times, that they use surveillance, they use the trading of one indictment against the other to create stool pigeons, to create informers, and they deliberately coach individuals by intimidation into making statements that satisfies them in the way they want to present their case. And therefore, there is just no way in the lower courts of this country and in some of the appeal courts that you can receive justice from the hands of supposedly the public servants of America.
Mr. Hoffa, was there wiretapping and the use of electronic eavesdropping equipment in your case?
We presented to the court the fact that the United States government had brought some 48 special agents into Chattanooga. All of those had electronic equipment, and the electronic equipment they used, we very carefully screened from the air and presented to the court. We might as well have presented a piece of tissue paper. There is just no question from the proof we have today that we were room bugged and wiretapped from the very moment that we arrived in Nashville and Chattanooga, Tennessee, and that the Chicago case was tainted by the same wiretapping, room bugging, and surveillance that took place in both of the Tennessee cases.
Are you saying that you have new evidence on this question?
Sometime tomorrow we will present affidavits without disclosing what those affidavits are at the Supreme Court of the United States in regards to what we have been able, in a long, exhaustive study, been able to bring about in a way of proof of what actually happened in wiretapping and room bugging for my attorneys and myself during these trials.
Mr. Hoffa, Senator Robert Kennedy has denied that while he was Attorney General, he was at all aware of wiretapping or bugging practices outside of cases of national security where he signed permission to tap certain wires. Is it your knowledge that, in fact, Mr. Kennedy did know about the practices that were followed in your case?
I never attended any meetings Kennedy attended, but lawyers who were on his staff have made public statements that he insisted on the latest devices possible to be made anywhere in the United States or the world to be used for wiretapping and room bugging. J. Edgar Hoover has made this statement that Robert Kennedy was completely aware of everything that happened in regards to the room bugging and wiretapping, plus the fact that if you take time to read the record of the Nevada case, you will find it becomes so brazen that they leased the wires and paid by a check from the United States government to where they were room tapping and wiretapping individuals under investigation. If you look in the last few days, you will find that 10 cases have been admitted to the various courts throughout the country that the Internal Revenue or the Justice Department or both from time to time have gone out and surveilled, room bugged, or wiretapped, or both, individuals involved in serious prosecution. Kennedy cannot, with a straight face, now try to say that he knew nothing about it or that he wasn't part of wiretapping and the prime instigator of what happened in the United States during this period of his attorney generalship of this country.
Senator Kennedy told me, as a matter of fact, just yesterday on tape, that he had no knowledge of the use of wiretapping or electronic eavesdropping in your case. Now, this is his most recent statement on this.
I would think that any executive who has personnel working for him could make such a statement.
Right.
By very carefully having that personnel working for him do the work that it was desirous of being contemplated, and then it being reduced to a transcript form without being a wiretap or a recording. And conveniently, somebody can say that this was either an interview or was a legally obtained wiretap. But I don't think Kennedy or anybody else can say that they were not aware of what was going on in the Justice Department concerning wiretapping or room bugging.
Mr. Hoffa, why do you think the Justice Department was so anxious to get you, so to speak?
I think that it was a question of a vendetta arising out of the McClellan Committee and concerning the Teamsters Union. Myself being head of the Teamsters Union was the target of that vendetta.
Mr. Hoffa, you have been one of the most important figures in American labor for a long time now. Do you feel that you have personified what American labor leaders should be like and what they should do as labor leaders for the members of their unions?
Labor leaders had three responsibilities, in my opinion. One, to organize the unorganized. Two, to get for those who are organized the best wages, hours, and conditions that can be gained without an undue loss of man hours during strikes. Third, I believe that it's incumbent upon a labor leader heading up an organization to speak out and protest against what he believes in the way of legislation or administration that is depressing the workers' opportunity from being able to equally meet at the bargaining table with the employers. And more in this country, from every decision, from all branches that are coming down, the workers are losing almost all of their rights that they thought they had gained under the Wagner labor law.
Well, do you think that the present administration in Washington today is what might be called pro-labor, or do you think that labor is losing out?
If you will look at the labor laws of the United States in 1947, you will find that almost every time a bad piece of labor legislation was passed, it was passed by the Friends of Organized Labor. Now, their idea of organized labor, in my opinion, is that it's all right to organize if you do not have a militant organization or you ask for what the worker is entitled to, which is his percentage of the profits made in corporate structures in this country. The very minute you build an organization economically strong enough and strategically strong enough to meet the employer on his own battleground, they immediately pass a rule, regulation, or a law that destroys the right of the worker to gain for himself and his family what he's rightfully entitled to, namely a decent living, a guarantee of a job, and the right to believe that when there's new innovations of automation put into effect, he should not be laid off, but by attrition only. Should there be less jobs, and he and those in return who are left should secure for themselves more of the profits out of the automation that created less jobs and more productivity.
Mr. Hoffa, Mr. Hoffa, do you think that the militancy of the Teamsters in the areas that you have mentioned is one of the reasons why this government has tried for so many years to put you behind bars?
There is no question that the national contract concerning some 500,000 of our 1,800,000 members brought about the impact of the McClellan Committee investigations and a desire to destroy this organization, as from the legislative standpoint, investigative standpoint, as well as the labor unions within the structure of the AFL-CIO.
Mr. Hoffa, what do you see as the major problem faced by labor unions today?
Lack of coordination of the economic power of organized labor, a lack of a willingness to recognize we must complete the job of organizing the unorganized, and a lack and willingness to understand you cannot meet by individual union action giant corporate structure, but you must have the labor unions that are involved in that financial structure of corporations jointly meeting with uniform expiration dates and a uniform purpose at the bargaining table, and recognizing that they cannot strike in an isolated area but must meet the corporation across corporate structures, or labor unions are going to be destroyed in the economic struggle that will be forced upon them the very minute that the employer can get a surplusage of labor that he can draw scabs or strikebreakers from.
Mr. Hoffa, approximately 3 weeks ago, Walter Reuther of the United Automobile Workers and of the AFL-CIO issued a statement in which he sharply criticized the AFL-CIO for many reasons, one of which was its failure to actively participate in the greater problems of society at large. I wonder if you would care to comment on the letter issued by Mr. Reuther.
I read Reuther's letter. This organization of the Teamsters Union is not an social workers organization. It is a workers organization. We go in for legislation that involves the welfare of the people of the United States, whether it be Social Security, minimum wage, or any of the necessary legislation to protect the workers. So far as the social aspect is concerned, our legislative director participates in discussing those issues. But so far as the AFL-CIO is concerned, is it as dead as last year's roses?
Why is it as dead as last year's roses?
Because of the top echelon at the age they're at are contented to remain in a position of power without being criticized or subjected to the economic struggles necessary to gain for the workers out of coordination of activity what they're entitled to.
Are you saying that the leadership is too far removed from the basic problems of the workers and from the workers themselves?
I would say that the leadership of the AFL-CIO, in rare exceptions, are totally unaware of what the workers are thinking back on the shops or on the streets or the highways of America.
But hasn't this been a tendency in union organization in general, even in the Teamsters Union? The larger you grow, the more there is a bureaucracy, the greater the separation between the top echelons and the worker.
Just not true. Every one of our vice presidents have an area and are required to attend the membership meetings of those areas so they can keep abreast of them, be part of the workers. All of our general organizers assigned in the areas are required to be in the membership meetings, participate in negotiations, participate in grievance settlements, and keep abreast of what the workers are thinking. And that's why we are in a position of having 25% of all of the elections in National Labor Relations Board and 25% of all the new members being in the Teamsters Union, despite the fact the rest of the labor unions are going backwards and losing elections and not having organized campaigns.
Yes, but there is a difference. I think it's inevitable between the early days of trade unionism, when, for example, the president of the union earned very little more, if any more at all, than the average worker. Today, there is an economic gap between the top and the bottom, and this automatically must have its effect.
Has no effect at all. I'm the highest paid labor leader in the country, $100,000. I'm negotiating myself right now in behalf of the 500,000 workers under the master contract. I drafted the agreement. I'm chairman of negotiations. I hold a meeting in the field, and I'm just as close to the workers as a shop steward is in the barns.
Mr. Hoffa, you have been, or rather the Teamsters Union has been accused of trying to raid the territories of other unions. I wonder if you'd care to comment on this.
We have taken members from other labor unions and intend to continue doing it. And we do it for several reasons. First of all, one, the workers seek us out desiring to change the unions. Two, there are labor unions who are constantly harassing our membership and our unions, who we have to deal with in the reverse order of constantly taking their membership away from them so that they will leave our membership alone. And last but not least, George Meany, with all of his letters, threats of expulsion of trade unions, councils, has not been able to keep the Teamsters Union and the rank and file members in the various councils and state federations from jointly working on our problems. We have today some 40 pacts with 40 international unions, to where we have joint organizing campaigns, joint negotiations, and we are not in a rating position with them. However, we do intend to continue rating individual unions who want to carry on Meany's fight against the Teamsters Union.
Well, then, isn't this a bit disruptive of the labor movement as a whole?
I don't know what disruption there can be when you find a worker under a union contract making $1.25 an hour and been there for 10 years in the union. It's about sometime somebody took that union over and got them a decent wage scale, and that's what we generally find.
In other words, you feel that you are working for the best interest of the workers, and regardless of whether or not they're organized in other unions, you feel that you can do better for them and would like to take over if possible.
Those we have taken over, all you have to do is check the contract they had prior to us taking over, the contract we have now, and it speaks for itself.
Mr. Hoffa, just to get back for a minute to the Ruther letter, do you think that the Teamsters has any role to play, for example, in the poverty program?
No, I do not. I believe that the poverty program is strictly a political program. It is probably one of the most underfinanced programs of the country. And for anybody to become associated with, must become associated with a failure. And we don't intend to be associated with something that, no matter what you say or suggest, is disregarded and bureaucrats take over and make their own decisions anyway. There's no use spinning your wheels.
So it's not a question of principle, then. It's a question that you don't think the program is effective, and therefore it's not worth the time of the Teamster Union.
We have other things to do in the way of legislation and the way of our union than going out and trying to change the economics of the United States so far as welfare programs or make work programs.
Mr. Hoffa, just two more questions. Teamsters Union has been called the most corrupt union in this country. I wonder if you would care to comment on this.
There's almost 1,800,000 families in the United States in the Teamsters Union. There are 900 local union subordinate bodies. And I defy anybody to take a cross-section of the Teamsters Union in any state or the entire United States or Canada and tell me that we do not have the average Canadian or American on the street in our union. And so far as our offices are concerned, since the vendetta of the McClellan Committee, the vendetta of the Bobby Kennedy Attorney Generalship, you have not witnessed the emerging of the publicity that took place to affect these trials. This is not a corrupt organization. They know it. We know it, and above all, our membership knows it. You could not, no matter who you are, keep the membership in a corrupt union captive without them revolting and seeking unions elsewhere. It's just impossible and ridiculous.
Is that necessarily so? I mean, it's been said that the workers couldn't care less whether the union was corrupt or not, so long as the union did get them the wages they feel they're entitled to. And I think
Some idiot made that statement. Nobody that has any knowledge of the American worker ever made that statement. The American worker is vitally interested in his union. He participates in the election of his officers, his shop stewards, and if he isn't happy with that union, never mind just the contract as such, but the way his union runs, there will be a change of officership as you've witnessed in many unions across this country. And the idiot who made that statement made it just for the purpose of trying to make the American worker look that he is stupid and doesn't understand what's happening in the United States. And it's to the contrary. The American worker and the Canadian worker are the most well versed, well read workers of the world. And they understand perfectly via TV, radio, newspapers, magazines of all sorts, and their own individual union papers and contracts as to what is happening in this country, and nobody is fooling them. And if they attempt to take away from the workers any of the gains they have made up to this point, they will find out how alert the American worker really is.
Mr. Hoffa, do you foresee in the future the possible breakup of the AFL-CIO?
No, I do not.
In other words, you think it's around to stay,
Yeah, like people on a raft,
even if the UAW should withdraw, for example?
like on a raft.
Like on a raft. One last question, getting back to the question of your current predicament. Mr. Hoffa, do you think you'll go to jail?
I have no comment to make. We're filing unnecessary appeals through the proper legal procedures prescribed by the United States government, and we're hoping for the best.
And Mr. Hoffa, would you care to make one last comment on Senator Robert Kennedy? What do you think his role has been in all of this, and how do you consider him as a presidential possibility?
I believe that the American people, being as well versed as they are in what's happening in this country, would never elect a Bobby Kennedy to the United States government. On the other hand, if they do, God help America. That's all I can say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hoffa.
Thank you for listening. In a moment, the live radio stream from WN.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. StreamYard wouldn't let me unmute. I was talking the whole time, you guys. Oh, I hate it when that happens. Hold on. What do you do? What do you do? Let's see. Not that one, not that one. Here we go, I found it. Now, I want to show you guys something. Okay, this is the Teamsters YouTube channel. And let me put that link in right now. I'm sorry, guys. I was just saying, did you think that was an interesting interview? You could go your lifetime about this guy. And it's amazing how many people have said that, they knew what happened to him. I couldn't believe it. Okay, this is the Teamsters right here.
Jimmy, every reporter that's written about Hoffa has commented on how tough you are. I know this is kind of a crazy question, but how tough are you, really?
It's not such a thing as being tough, so far as the physical sense is concerned.
Didn't we just watch this one? No, we didn't.
I certainly believe that I have the physical stamina to be able to withstand anything that threatens this international union.
Well, where does this reputation come from?
Well, I've had many of them. Physical fight. I don't know which is the toughest. I had a few of them that I wish I didn't have when I was over with.
For instance,
But I come out all right.
No.
I have no.
Look at.
what are you thinking of?
Let's go up a little.
Well, the foot patrolmen, the scabs.
Hold on.
You mean the pick?
Came back on the picket line the following afternoon and we carried on our dispute.
Hold on, sorry. Okay, we did. Okay, we don't want to watch repeats. No, we don't got time for that, do we? Wasn't that a lot of information, you guys? I knew it would be a lot. However, I just want to show you a couple things, and we could do a part 2 if you're interested. Because look at what I got. You're not going to believe this crap. Yeah, I get excited over stupid stuff like this. Well, it's not stupid. It's history. I love looking at court documents. So, I'm going to show you the 3. Freedom of Information Act and Privacy Act. How many pages is this one? 37 pages about Hoffa. Okay. Let's see, when was this? What year? Shoot. What was the year? 1995? What? Oh, God. Okay. This is interesting. And here's another one. This is the indictment, the original indictment. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 co-defenders. Okay. And this is what you call an indictment back then. Look at that, you guys. They don't go in details. Look at that. This is 14 pages. Crazy, crazy, crazy. I mean, look at. Oh my God, I'm telling you. I know. That phone interview really caught my attention. And then I got this here. Oh boy. Here is FBI subject Jimmy. And this one is how many pages? Hold on. 168 pages. You guys. Look at this. Look at this crap. It's not crap. Isn't this interesting? I cannot wait to get through this. So this is 168 pages. And I got to be sure to download it. Here we go. I don't want to lose it. Yeah. It's how the words, letters were like together. It's really hard to read. Isn't that cool though? Finding that FBI stuff? I think it is. And I want to show you guys. Let's see. La 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 la. This is not right. Hold on. Okay. And this is for tomorrow. Don't forget. Don't forget. Don't forget. Right here. Oh, shoot. So it'll be 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. It's going to be amazing. Also, our friend Master Shredder, he will be going live tonight, and it'll be an open panel, and we're going to talk about you know who. Okay? So let me get his channel link. Very, very nice man. That whole crowd is. So be sure to sub up to him. Sorry, I'm kind of slow. My eyes are hurting because I did a lot of researching trying to pick out like the best interviews I've seen, trying to do it in order from, the beginning, which is so hard to do because there's way too much to it. So sub up to his channel. He's awesome. Did you guys like this kind of stuff? I know. My eyes are killing me. No, I've been up since 5 a.m. doing my own research, because I wanted to do something different than everybody else. You know what I mean? Oh, yes. Do you want to see the guys that are on YouTube? The mob people? There's 2 of them I watch so I can laugh. Now, John Gotti, remember the guy that snitched on him, that ratted on him? And then when he got out, he was in witness protection for, 7 years, 8 years, something like that? And then, oh, God, I had his court record. I will have that ready when we look at the documents here from the FBI. No, he is, I'll find him. him and another guy got into an argument. This other made man. It's not Whitey. But they got YouTube channels, you guys. Ain't that funny? Now, this dude that Sammy the Bull. Sammy the Bull. He's all over the internet doing interviews, you guys. It's kind of funny. He's not dead. Just saying. All right. All right. Hold on. Okay, this is the guy that okay. This is Michael Franzine. He's the only one that I like on here so far. He's interesting to talk to. He's no longer affiliated, but let me tell you, he has a history. So here's Michael's channel right here. He turned, I don't know, his life over to God. But that's his channel. And John Gotti's daughter, she has a channel. Let's see, we got Chris Colombo. Let me show you. He's kind of a character. I'll show you his channel. And his dad was a big time whatchamacallit. His dad was a boss. So that's Chris. I'm just showing you guys what interests me, in case you want to check them out. And let's see. And I'm going to find Sammy the Bull. Mind you, he goes all over the internet doing interviews with people that have many, many, many subs. Here's his channel. And I don't know where Angel's at, Gotti. So I think this is all that I'm going to cover for this, because I think we all have a good idea, and I think this was a lot to take in my opinion. Because when I found this stuff, you guys, I didn't watch it. I watched probably the first couple minutes. I thought, oh, okay, this sounds good. But we'll go through the FBI court records. They were on him for a very long time. All right. I'm going to get going. Thank you so much to every one of you that came through. I appreciate you. Remember tonight, Shredders is going live. I'm going to be on the panel. It's an open panel, and we are going to talk to we're going to talk about a nasty, nasty, nasty YouTuber. Yes. You better. I better see every one of you. You're welcome, sweetie. But what I did notice about the documents, they sure did black out a lot of stuff, you guys. Thank you. Okay. Love you all. Good night.